My life, for the past decade since my husband Frank passed, has been one of quiet, ordered contentment. I live in the same three-bedroom colonial in a leafy suburb of Philadelphia that we bought 40 years ago. The mortgage was paid off in the 90s, my garden is my pride and joy, and my Social Security, combined with Frank's modest pension and our carefully managed investments, means I live comfortably. I'm not jet-setting to Paris or buying designer handbags, but I can afford to get the roof redone without worry, and I treat myself to the good coffee beans. My son, Ethan, my only child, would have you believe otherwise. To hear him tell it, you'd think I was surviving on cat food and darning socks with holes the size of silver dollars. I didn't know the extent of this narrative, of course. Not at first. At first, all I saw was my ambitious, handsome son trying to make his way in the cutthroat world of New York City finance. He'd call me every Sunday, his voice a smooth baritone crackling over the line. "How are you doing, Mom? Are you getting by okay? I know things are tight." I'd always laugh. "Ethan, honey, I'm fine. The hydrangeas are beautiful this year. Mrs. Gable from next door brought over a lemon meringue pie." But he'd persist, a strange note of performance in his voice. "Just be sure to let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. It's tough out there for seniors on a fixed income." I chalked it up to a millennial's exaggerated sense of economic doom, a story he was telling himself to fuel his own drive. Frank and I had raised him to be independent, to value hard work, but we also made it clear that he would one day be very comfortable himself. Our estate, valued at just over $2 million, was all earmarked for him. It was his safety net, the foundation we had built not just for our own security, but for his future. He knew this. We'd had the conversation with our lawyer, Mr. Davies, years ago. Ethan was aware of the trust, the house, the portfolio, so his constant worried questions about my finances felt odd, disconnected from our reality. I thought it was just his way of showing he cared, a clumsy, roundabout way of saying he loved me. I never imagined it was a lie, a carefully constructed, deeply cynical lie he was selling to his new, wealthy friends. For me, life went on. I'd prune my roses, host my book club, and watch old movies with my cat Marmalade purring on my lap. I was proud of my son, living his big city dream. I'd send him care packages with his favorite cookies and a little gas money, a $100 bill tucked inside a greeting card, a gesture he always accepted with dramatic gratitude. I was the loving, supportive mother, and he was the devoted, concerned son. It was a perfect picture. From a distance, at least. Up close, as I would soon discover, the paint was cracked and peeling, revealing something rotten underneath. I was content in my little world, completely unaware that in another, much glitzier world, I was being painted as a tragic figure, a poor, elderly mother who was my son's greatest burden. The truth is, my only burden was my own naivete, and that was about to be shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. Ethan came down for a weekend in early October. The autumn air was crisp, and the maple trees lining our street were a riot of red and gold. He blew in like a storm, all expensive cologne, a cashmere sweater draped over his shoulders, and a constant vibrating phone in his hand. He looked tired, the skin under his eyes a little too dark. He kissed my cheek and immediately started pacing around the kitchen as I made us some tea. "It's insane up there, Mom. The pressure is just relentless. You wouldn't believe the kind of money people are throwing around. My friend Chad, his dad just bought him a penthouse for his 30th birthday. A penthouse." He shook his head, a bitter little smile on his face. "Must be nice." I set a steaming mug in front of him. "You have a lovely apartment, Ethan, and you earned it yourself. Your father would be so proud of that." He took a sip, but his eyes were distant. "It's a shoebox, Mom, and I'm drowning in rent. Everyone I work with, they all have family money. They have these safety nets, these massive inheritances. It's a different league." There it was again, the talk of money. I decided to change the subject, to bring him back to earth. We talked about the neighbors, about a funny thing the cat did, about the upcoming town harvest festival. He seemed to relax, the city tension slowly seeping out of him. He even helped me with the gutters on Saturday, a task he'd grumbled about as a teenager, but now attacked with a grim sort of focus. That evening, As he was packing his bag to head back to the city, he couldn't find his tablet. "Mom, have you seen my iPad? The old one? I think I brought it to stream a movie." We looked everywhere, but it was nowhere to be found. "Don't worry about it," he finally said, glancing at his watch. "It's ancient anyway. If it turns up, just put it in a drawer. I've got to run or I'll hit traffic." He gave me a quick, distracted hug and was gone, his expensive car whispering down the quiet street. The next day, while I was dusting the living room, I found it. The old iPad had slipped down between the cushions of the armchair. I smiled, picked it up, and, just as he'd said, I opened the drawer of the side table to put it away. But as I did, the screen lit up. It was unlocked, and a string of new messages was displayed right there on the screen. It was a group chat. The name at the top read, "Boys Weekend." I should have closed it. I should have respected his privacy and put it away. But one name caught my eye. My name, or rather, a nickname. Poor Mama E. Curiosity, a cold and heavy thing, settled in my stomach. I told myself I was just going to see why he'd used my name. I tapped on the notification, and the world as I knew it fell away. My hand trembled as I held the iPad, the screen casting a pale, sickly light on my face in the dim afternoon of my living room. The group chat was a sea of blue and gray bubbles, a casual, flowing conversation between Ethan and 3 other men I presumed were his wealthy friends. Chad, a man named Trevor, and someone called Blake. I started scrolling up, my heart beginning to beat a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. It wasn't hard to find the context. They were planning a ski trip to Aspen. The messages were full of casual boasts about first-class flights and reservations at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery bill. Then I saw it. The message from Ethan that started it all. Ethan: "Damn, guys, not sure I can swing Aspen this year. Things are a little tight." Chad: "Tight? Dude, your bonus was huge. Don't hold out on us." And then, the first lie, the one that opened the floodgates. Ethan: "Bonus is already gone. Had to send a big chunk to my mom. Her roof was leaking and her furnace went out. You know how it is, old house, fixed income. Poor Mama E is barely scraping by." My breath hitched. My roof! I'd had it replaced 3 years ago and paid for it in full from my savings. My furnace was serviced every autumn and worked perfectly. I felt a wave of nausea. I kept reading, scrolling through messages that were like tiny poison daggers. Trevor: "That's rough, man. Respect for taking care of her, though. My parents just cut me a check when I told them my property taxes went up." Ethan: "Yeah, well, not all of us have that luxury. She's my responsibility. She's all alone out there in that old house, proud, but she's basically a charity case. I'm pretty much all she has." A charity case. The words seemed to vibrate on the screen. He was using me, using a fabricated version of my life as a shield for his own financial insecurities. It was a performance. He was playing the role of the noble, struggling son, burdened by his destitute mother. The more I read, the worse it got. He'd told them I couldn't afford proper dental care, that he was paying for my astronomical medical bills. I have excellent insurance. And that the $100 bills I sent him were a pathetic attempt to help him, which he accepted so she doesn't feel useless. Blake: "Seriously, E, you should set up a GoFundMe for her or something. We'd all chip in. No shame in it." My son's reply made me drop the iPad onto the carpeted floor. Ethan: "Nah, man, she's too proud for that. But listen, if you guys wanted to help me help her, maybe you could spot me for the Aspen trip? Consider it a loan. For a good cause. For Mama E." There it was. The grift. The emotional blackmail. He wasn't just lying. He was monetizing his lie. He was using their sympathy for his imaginary poor mother to fund his luxury lifestyle. I sat there, frozen in my armchair, the silence of my comfortable, paid-for house pressing in on me. The woman they were talking about wasn't me. She was a fiction, a pathetic character he'd invented. But the shame, the humiliation, the profound, soul-crushing betrayal, that was all mine. For a full day, I did nothing. I moved through my house like a ghost, the iPad sitting face down on the coffee table like a dark omen. The hurt was a physical thing, a hollow ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. Every memory of Ethan's concern was now tainted. Every "How are you, Mom?" was a lie. Every dramatic sigh about his finances was a rehearsal. He hadn't just disrespected me, he had erased me. He had replaced the strong, independent woman who had raised him with a caricature of a helpless old lady to be pitied and used. The grief was immense. It felt like I had lost my son. But by the second day, something else began to bubble up through the sorrow. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time, not since a shady contractor tried to scam Frank on a kitchen remodel 30 years ago. It was anger. A cold, clear, and utterly focused fury. The hurt was still there, but now it had a purpose. He thought I was a charity case. He thought I was old, useless, and out of touch. He thought I was just some prop in his elaborate play. Fine. I would show him just how wrong he was. I picked up the iPad again, my hand steady this time. I looked up the names from the group chat. Chad, Trevor, and Blake. It wasn't difficult. Their social media profiles were public and garish, a constant stream of photos from yachts, exclusive clubs, and exotic vacations. They were exactly the kind of people who would fall for Ethan's story. Rich enough not to question the details, and insulated enough to believe his performance of noble poverty. They saw my son as a hero, sacrificing for his poor mother. I looked at their smiling, self-satisfied faces and felt a new resolve harden within me. My son had written a story about me to get what he wanted. Now, I would write the ending. He wanted to play the part of a man burdened by his mother's poverty. I would give him a taste of what that actually felt like. He had used my name and my life to solicit money from his friends. I decided right then and there that he would never see a single cent of the money Frank and I had worked our entire lives for. His inheritance, the safety net he took for granted while pretending it didn't exist, was gone. He wanted to talk about charity? I would show him what real charity looked like. The plan began to form in my mind, not as a hot-headed act of revenge, but as a calm, logical, and deeply satisfying execution of justice. My grief had burned away, leaving behind the hard, unbreakable diamond of my decision. The curtain was about to fall on Ethan's little drama, and I was going to be the one to bring it down. The first step in my plan required a professional. I walked over to the antique secretary desk where I keep my important papers and pulled out a business card I hadn't needed in years. Davies and Finch, attorneys at law. Mr. Davies had been our family lawyer for 30 years. He had drafted our first wills, helped us set up Ethan's college fund, and handled the legalities after Frank passed. He was a kind, no-nonsense man who knew our family's history inside and out. My hand was steady as I dialed the number. His secretary put me through immediately. "Eleanor, what a pleasant surprise. I hope everything is all right," his familiar, gravelly voice said. "Everything is fine, James. In fact, things are becoming very clear," I replied, my own voice sounding stronger than I expected. "I need to schedule an appointment. I'd like to make some significant changes to my will." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Significant changes?" "Of course. Is this something regarding Ethan's trust?" "It is," I said, taking a deep breath. "I want to dissolve it. I want to change the primary beneficiary of my entire estate." "I see," he said slowly. His tone was professionally neutral, but I could hear the unspoken question. "Eleanor, if I may ask, has something happened? This is a major reversal of the plans you and Frank set up." This was the moment. I could have been vague, but I owed him, and myself, the truth. "James, I recently discovered that my son has been misrepresenting my financial situation to his friends. He's been portraying me as a destitute woman, a charity case, as he put it, in order to solicit money from them to fund his lifestyle." I explained what I had found on the iPad, my voice even and measured, relaying the facts without the raw emotion. I told him about the Aspen trip, about the lies regarding the house, my health, everything. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. When he finally spoke, the professional neutrality was gone, replaced by a tone of quiet anger on my behalf. "That is reprehensible, Eleanor. I am so sorry you had to learn that." "Don't be sorry, James. Be my lawyer," I said firmly. "I want to liquidate the trust and donate the entirety of my estate, upon my death, to a charity. and I want to make a significant donation right now, from my liquid assets to the same charity. I want it to be a charity that helps the elderly poor. The irony seems appropriate. Mr. Davies cleared his throat. There are many excellent organizations. The Seniors in Need Foundation is a national one with a very good reputation. We can certainly set that up. As for the will, it's your money, Eleanor. Your decision is final. When would you like to come in? How is tomorrow morning? I asked. I don't want to waste another minute. He agreed, and we set a time. When I hung up the phone, I felt a profound sense of relief. It was happening. This wasn't just a fantasy of revenge anymore. It was a concrete plan in motion. Ethan had used a lie about a charity case to get a few $1,000s for a ski trip. I was about to use his inheritance to help hundreds of actual charity cases. His short-sighted greed was about to fund a legacy of genuine kindness. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I dressed with purpose. I chose a simple, elegant navy blue dress, the pearls Frank had given me for our 25th anniversary, and a pair of sensible heels. I wanted to look like what I was, a composed, financially secure woman who was in complete control of her faculties and her fortune. Mr. Davies's office was just as I remembered it, smelling of old books and lemon polish, with dark wood paneling and framed degrees on the wall. He greeted me not with pity, but with a respectful handshake. "Eleanor, please come in." He had the documents ready. We spent the first hour going over the details. He explained the legal process of revoking the existing trust and establishing a new one with the Seniors in Need Foundation as the sole beneficiary. He was meticulous, ensuring I understood every clause, every implication. He was legally obligated to make sure I was of sound mind and not under duress. My clarity and resolve made that an easy task for him. The house, the investment portfolio, the savings, everything will be left to the foundation, I confirmed, my voice unwavering. Ethan will be left with $1, a symbolic sum to make it clear he was intentionally disinherited and cannot legally contest the will on grounds of being forgotten. Mr. Davies nodded, a grim look on his face. It's airtight. Then, we moved on to the second part of my plan. I had brought my checkbook, but he suggested a wire transfer would be more immediate and secure for the amount I had in mind. I had decided on a figure the night before, $250,000. It was a substantial sum, enough to make a real impact, and enough to represent a serious, immediate consequence for Ethan's actions. Mr. Davies helped me log into my bank account on his secure computer. I looked at the balance, the result of a lifetime of work, saving, and prudent investment. Then with a few clicks, I transferred $250,000 to the Seniors in Need Foundation. The confirmation screen appeared, and a receipt was instantly emailed to me. A wave of catharsis washed over me. It was done. The money that Ethan felt so entitled to, the wealth he was already leveraging through his lies, was now flowing to people who genuinely needed it. The final step was signing the new will. Mr. Davies slid the heavy vellum paper across his polished mahogany desk. He handed me a fountain pen, the same one I remembered Frank using to sign the original documents all those years ago. The weight of it felt good in my hand. I signed my name, Eleanor Grace Wallace, on each required line. My signature was not the shaky scrawl of a poor charity case. It was the firm, decisive stroke of a woman taking back her story. I had not just signed a legal document, I had signed my Declaration of Independence. From my son's greed, from his lies, and from the weak, pathetic character he had tried to turn me into. I returned home from the lawyer's office with a crisp, notarized copy of my new will and a printed receipt of my donation. The afternoon sun was streaming into my living room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For the first time in days, my house felt like my own again. It was time for the final, most crucial part of my plan. It wasn't enough to simply disinherit Ethan. He needed to understand why. And more importantly, his friends, the audience for his pathetic play, needed to know the truth. They needed to see the man they were enabling for who he truly was. I sat down at my secretary desk and took out a sheet of my best stationery, the thick, cream-colored paper with my monogrammed initials at the top. I chose my favorite fountain pen, the one with the smooth, flowing ink. I was not writing a letter of anger. I was writing a letter of fact. I decided to address it to Chad, the one who seemed to be the ringleader, but I would include a note asking him to share it with Trevor and Blake. My hand was perfectly steady as I began to write. "Dear Mr. Chadwick," I began, using his formal name, "you don't know me, but I have recently become aware that I am a subject of some interest and concern within your circle of friends. My name is Eleanor Wallace, and I am Ethan's mother. My son recently left his iPad at my home, and I inadvertently came across a conversation in which my life and financial circumstances were discussed at length. I understand you have been led to believe that I am a poor charity case, struggling to get by on a fixed income, and that my son is making great personal and financial sacrifices to support me. I am writing to you today to set the record straight. I am not, nor have I ever been, destitute. The home I live in was paid off in 1998. My late husband and I built a successful life through hard work, and I have lived my retirement in comfort and financial security, lacking for nothing. The stories of my leaking roof, my broken furnace, and my inability to afford basic care are, I'm afraid, complete fabrications. They are lies my son told you to elicit your sympathy and, it seems, your financial contributions for his lifestyle. He has preyed on your goodwill, using a cruel and false caricature of his own mother as a tool. While I am deeply hurt by his deception, I am also a pragmatist. My son has demonstrated a profound disrespect for the legacy my husband and I built, and an even more profound disregard for the truth. He seems very concerned with the idea of charity, so I have decided to help him lean into that interest. Enclosed, you will find a receipt for a donation of $250,000 that I made yesterday to the Seniors in Need Foundation, a wonderful organization that helps elderly people who are in actual financial distress. Furthermore, I have restructured my will. Upon my death, my entire estate, originally intended for Ethan, will be transferred to this foundation. I felt it was only fair that you, who have been so worried about my son's burden, should know the truth. Ethan is not burdened by a poor mother. From this day forward, however, he will be burdened by his own choices. Thank you for your concern. It has, in its own way, been incredibly clarifying. I signed it. Sincerely, Eleanor G. Wallace. I folded the letter, along with a high-quality copy of the donation receipt, and slid them into a matching envelope. I addressed it to Chad at his Manhattan office, the address for which I'd easily found online. I walked to the corner mailbox, the crisp autumn air feeling clean and new. As I dropped the letter into the slot, I didn't feel vengeful. I felt a sense of peace. The truth was on its way. 3 days. It took 3 days for the fallout to reach me. I was in my garden trimming the last of the roses before the first frost, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Ethan's name. I let it ring for a moment, then answered, my voice calm. "Hello, Ethan." The explosion on the other end was immediate. It wasn't a voice. It was a shriek of pure rage and panic. "What did you do? What did you do? My phone is blowing up. Chad sent me a picture of some crazy letter, $250,000? My inheritance? Are you out of your mind?" I held the phone slightly away from my ear. "No, Ethan. For the first time in a long time, I think my mind is perfectly clear. I simply corrected the narrative you've been spinning." "Narrative? It was just talk. Locker room talk. You weren't supposed to see that. You went through my private messages. That's insane," he sputtered, his voice cracking. "Your private messages were left open on your iPad in my living room, Ethan. And they weren't just talk. They were calculated lies designed to defraud your friends by using me as a prop. You called your own mother a charity case to fund a ski trip. Did you really think there would be no consequences?" There was a choking sound on the other end. "But my inheritance! Mom, that was for my future, for my family! You can't just give it away to strangers." "I can, and I have," I said, my voice as cool and hard as polished steel. "That money was a legacy from your father and me. It was built on honesty, hard work, and respect. 3 things you've clearly forgotten. The people I'm giving it to, the strangers, are genuinely in the position you pretended I was in. They need it. You, on the other hand, just wanted it. There's a very big difference." He started to plead then, his anger dissolving into a desperate, pathetic whine. He told me he would pay me back, that he'd apologize to his friends, that he'd do anything. He said he loved me. Love, Ethan, is not this, I said softly. What you did was a perversion of love. It was a transaction. You don't get to destroy my character for your own gain and then expect to inherit the fruits of my life. The will is signed. The donation is made. It is done. I could hear him weeping now, the desperate sobs of a spoiled child who had finally been told no. My life is over, he whispered. No, I said, looking out at my beautiful, peaceful garden, the one I had tended for decades. Your life isn't over. Your free ride is. You're an intelligent, educated man. It's time you learned to build a life on your own merits, not on my money and your lies. Goodbye, Ethan. I hung up before he could say another word. I blocked his number. I stood there for a long moment, the cool air on my cheeks. There was no joy, but there was no regret. There was only a profound, quiet sense of justice. He had underestimated me. He had seen an old woman, a relic, a prop. But he forgot that I was the one who built the stage he danced on. And I was the one who could burn it down.